A billionaire mocked a waitress for her ancient phone until his entire empire collapsed. When nothing else could save him, that useless device became his only hope. But when she powered it on, she discovered the secret that destroyed her father. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The autumn wind blew cold and sharp through the empty streets of small-town Ohio. It rattled the rusty sign hanging above Earl's Diner, making it creak and swing back and forth. The old sign had been there for 30 years, maybe more. Nobody really counted anymore. Inside the diner, it was warm. It smelled like fresh coffee and bacon, like home. Lucy Carter moved between the tables with a coffee pot in her hand. She wore a simple uniform, a blue dress with a white apron tied around her waist. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She smiled at everyone, always smiling. "More coffee, Jake?" she asked one of the truck drivers sitting at the counter. "You're an angel, Lucy," Jake said, grinning. "Best coffee in the whole state." Lucy laughed softly. "You say that every morning." "Because it's true every morning," he replied, and the other drivers laughed too. Earl, the owner of the diner, stood behind the counter, wiping down plates. He was an old man with kind eyes and silver hair. He had owned this place since before Lucy was born. He treated her like a daughter, like family. "You're gonna spoil these boys, Lucy," Earl teased, shaking his head. "They work hard," Lucy said. "They deserve to be spoiled a little." Life was simple here, simple and honest. Lucy didn't have much money. She lived in a tiny apartment above the diner, but she was happy. She had Earl, she had her regulars, she had her father's memory. On the counter next to the napkin holder sat an old cell phone. It was ancient. The screen was scratched. The buttons were worn. But Lucy kept it close, always. It had been her father's phone. Richard Carter had died 3 years ago. He had been a good man, a technician. He fixed things, phones, radios, old machines. He had a gift for it, and he had loved Lucy more than anything in the world. "Your heart is your strongest tool, sweetheart," he used to say. Never forget that. Lucy touched the phone gently, remembering his voice. Then the bell above the diner door chimed. Lucy looked up. Her smile faded just a little. A black car had parked outside. It was sleek, expensive, completely out of place in front of Earl's Diner. The kind of car that cost more than most people made in a year. The door opened. A man stepped out. He wore a tailored suit. Black. Perfect. His shoes shined like mirrors. His watch glittered on his wrist. He looked around the diner like he had walked into the wrong place, like he was too good for it. Andrew Blake. Lucy didn't know his name yet, but she could tell everything she needed to know just by looking at him. He was rich, very rich, and he knew it. Andrew walked to the counter and sat down without a word. He didn't smile, didn't say hello. He just pulled out his phone and started typing. Lucy approached him with her coffee pot. "Good morning," she said kindly. "Can I get you something?" "Coffee, fast," he said without looking up. Lucy blinked. "No, please, no thank you. Just an order," like she was a machine. But she smiled anyway. She always did. "Coming right up," she said. She poured him a cup of coffee and set it in front of him. He didn't even glance at her, just kept typing on his phone. Lucy turned back to the counter. That's when Andrew noticed it. The old phone. He stopped typing. He stared at it. Then he laughed. Not a kind laugh. A mocking one. "That thing still works?" he asked, pointing at the phone. Lucy turned around. She looked at the phone, then at him. "Yes," she said calmly. "It works." Andrew smirked. "That's a relic. A piece of junk. How can you even use it?" The diner went quiet. Jake and the other truck drivers looked over. Earl stopped wiping plates. Lucy felt her heart squeeze. That phone wasn't junk. It was her father's. It was precious. But she didn't get angry. She didn't yell. She just smiled. "It works better than a lot of modern people," she said softly. The entire diner erupted in laughter. Jake slapped the counter. Earl grinned wide. Even the cook in the back chuckled. Andrew's face turned red. He wasn't used to being laughed at. Not by anyone. And definitely not by a waitress in a small-town diner. He stood up quickly, threw a $20 bill on the counter, and walked out without another word. Lucy watched him go. She felt a strange sadness in her chest. Not for herself, but for him. He had everything. Money, power, success, but he had no kindness, no heart. Good riddance, Jake muttered. But Lucy didn't say anything. She just picked up the old phone and held it close. Outside, the sky was changing. Dark clouds rolled in from the east. The wind picked up. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. Lucy looked out the window and whispered, "Something's about to change, isn't it, Dad?" The phone stayed silent, but somehow she felt like he heard her. High above the city, in a glass tower that touched the clouds, chaos exploded. Andrew Blake stood in the middle of his enormous office. It was beautiful, modern, perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Everything in the room screamed power and success. But right now, none of it mattered, because everything was falling apart. "Sir, all communication systems are down," shouted one of the technicians, panic in his voice. "What do you mean down?" Andrew snapped. "I mean down. No phones, no internet, no servers. Nothing works." Andrew felt his blood run cold. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not to Blake Industries. His company was one of the biggest telecommunications companies in the country. They provided phone service, internet, satellite communication, everything. And now their own systems were dead. "Fix it," Andrew barked. "I don't care what it takes. Fix it now." But the technicians just stared at their screens, helpless. The silence was absolute. No signals, no connection, nothing. Andrew's assistant ran in, her face pale. "Sir, we're losing billions every hour. Our clients are furious. The stock is crashing." Andrew slammed his fist on the desk. "I know." His heart pounded. His hands shook. This was impossible. He had the best engineers, the best technology. How could everything just stop? Across the room, Victor Hale watched quietly. He was Andrew's vice president, his right-hand man, or so everyone thought. Victor smiled, just a little, just enough that nobody noticed. He crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "This is bad, Andrew," he said, trying to sound concerned. "Really bad." But inside, Victor was celebrating. This was exactly what he wanted. Andrew turned to him. "Do you have any ideas, Victor?" Victor shrugged. "Without communication, we're dead in the water. Unless we find a signal. Any signal." "Where?" Andrew demanded. "Where do we find a signal when every system in the country is down?" Before Victor could answer, the door opened. Clara Blake walked in slowly. She was an older woman with silver hair and gentle eyes. She wore a simple dress and a shawl around her shoulders. She didn't look like the mother of a billionaire. She looked like a grandmother. Warm, kind. "Andrew," she said softly. "Not now, Mother," Andrew said, his voice sharp. But Clara didn't leave. She walked closer. She looked at her son with sadness in her eyes. "Maybe the solution isn't at the top, my son," she said quietly. Andrew stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means that sometimes the answer comes from the bottom, from the humble, from the forgotten." Andrew shook his head. "This isn't a fairy tale, Mother. This is business. I need technology, engineers, not wisdom." Clara sighed. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Pride is a heavy crown, Andrew." But he pulled away. His pride was too strong, too big. It filled the entire room. Just then, one of the younger engineers called out, "Sir, wait, I'm picking up something." Everyone turned. "What is it?" Andrew demanded. The engineer stared at his screen, confused. "It's an analog signal, old technology, really old, but it's active. It's working." Andrew's eyes widened. "Where is it coming from?" The engineer typed quickly. "Ohio, a small town. The signal is weak but stable. It's connected to an old network that's still online." Andrew felt his heart skip. Ohio, a small town, a diner, a waitress, an old phone. "Lucy Carter," he whispered. Victor's smile disappeared. "What?" Andrew grabbed his coat. "I need to go to Ohio." "What? Why?" Victor demanded, suddenly nervous. But Andrew didn't answer. He just walked out, his mind racing. Clara watched him go. She closed her eyes and prayed softly. "Guide him, Lord. Guide him back to what matters." Outside, the storm clouds grew darker. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The black car appeared again in front of Earl's diner. Lucy was wiping down a table when she saw it through the window. Her heart jumped. She didn't know why. The door opened. Andrew Blake stepped out. But this time he was different. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was messy. His face looked tired, desperate. He walked into the diner slowly. Earl looked up from behind the counter. Well, look who's back." Andrew ignored him. He looked straight at Lucy. "I need your help," he said. Lucy blinked. She put down her towel. "Help? With what? Did the coffee burn your tongue?" Andrew shook his head. "No, I need your phone." Lucy stared at him. "My phone?" Andrew pulled out his tablet and showed her the screen. It was black. Dead. "Nothing works," he said quietly. "No phones. No internet. No signals. Everything is down. Everywhere." Lucy's eyes widened. "Everywhere. Everywhere," Andrew repeated. "Except for one place. One signal. Yours." Lucy looked down at the old phone sitting on the counter. It looked so small. So simple. How could it be the only thing working? Earl crossed his arms. So the rich man's world fell apart, and now he's coming here for help? Andrew's face turned red, but he didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just looked at Lucy. "Please," he said. The words sounded strange coming from him, like he wasn't used to saying it. Lucy hesitated. This man had mocked her, laughed at her father's phone, and now he wanted her help. But then she looked into his eyes, and she saw something she hadn't seen before. Fear, desperation, humanity. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Always help, Lucy, even when it's hard." She took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll help, but on one condition." "Anything," Andrew said quickly. "You promise not to laugh at my phone ever again." Andrew smiled. It was small, embarrassed, but real. "I promise." Earl shook his head, chuckling. "Girl's got a heart of gold, just like her daddy." Lucy picked up the phone. She held it gently like it was made of glass. Just then, Andrew's tablet buzzed. A call was coming through somehow. He answered it. "Andrew." It was his mother, Clara. Her voice was shaking. "Andrew, please, we need that signal. The servers are failing. We're losing everything." Andrew looked at Lucy. "Can you come with me? To my building? We need to connect your phone to our system." Lucy's hands trembled. "Leave the diner. Go to a big city. To a billionaire's tower. I don't know if I can," she whispered. But then she looked down at the phone, and she felt her father's presence, his love, his courage. "Okay," she said. "I'll go." Earl put a hand on her shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, kiddo." Lucy nodded. She whispered softly, "Dad, guide me one more time, please." The phone vibrated gently in her hand, like an answer. Andrew opened the door for her. "Thank you," he said. And this time, he meant it. As they walked to the car, the sky rumbled. The storm was close now, very close. But inside Lucy's heart, something warm was growing. Hope. The glass tower rose high into the sky like a mountain made of mirrors. Lucy had never seen anything like it. She stood in the parking garage, staring up, her old phone clutched tightly in her hand. "Come on," Andrew said gently. "Everyone's waiting." They took the elevator to the top floor. Lucy's stomach flipped as they rose higher and higher. She felt so small, so out of place. When the elevator doors opened, dozens of people turned to stare. Engineers, executives, all of them in expensive clothes, all of them looking at her like she was from another planet. Lucy felt her cheeks burn. She was just a waitress, in a simple uniform, holding an old phone. "This is her," one of the technicians whispered. "This is our solution." Another one laughed quietly. "An ancient phone? That's what's going to save us?" Lucy looked down. Her hands started to shake. But then Andrew's voice cut through the room like a knife. Silence. Everyone stopped. The room went completely quiet. Andrew looked at each person, his eyes cold. "She's here to help. Show some respect." Nobody said another word. Lucy looked up at him, surprised. He gave her a small nod. "It's okay." She took a deep breath and walked forward. In the corner of the room, there was an old terminal. Dusty, forgotten. It looked ancient compared to all the modern technology around it. "That's it," one of the engineers said. "That's the old analog port. We never use it anymore." Lucy walked over to it. She knelt down and looked at the phone in her hand, then at the terminal. "Dad, please let this work," she whispered. She connected the phone carefully. Her fingers moved with confidence, like she had done this 100 times before, because she had. Her father had taught her. The terminal blinked, once, twice. Then it came to life. A low hum filled the room. Lights started flashing on the servers. Screens flickered back on. The sound of connection echoed through the entire floor. "Network restored," one of the engineers said, his voice barely a whisper. I don't believe it." Lucy stood up slowly. She smiled. My dad taught me this. He was a technician. He knew how to fix hearts and wires. Andrew stared at her. For the first time, he truly saw her. Not as a waitress, not as someone beneath him, but as someone extraordinary. But then something happened. A file appeared on one of the main screens. Old, hidden, buried deep in the system. Victor Hale, standing in the back, went pale. His eyes widened. What is that? Andrew asked, walking closer to the screen. Lucy leaned in. She frowned. It's a secret account with transactions, a lot of them. Andrew's jaw clenched. Transactions? What kind? Money being moved, Lucy said. Millions. Transferred out of the company. Hidden. Covered up. The room went dead silent. Andrew turned slowly. His eyes locked on Victor. Victor? Andrew's voice was ice cold. Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It's nothing. Just a system error. Old data. Meaningless. Lies smell, Victor, Lucy said quietly. And yours reeks. Victor's face twisted with anger. He lunged toward the terminal, trying to disconnect everything. But the old phone wouldn't turn off. It stayed on. Strong. Steady. The past wasn't done talking yet, and the truth was about to destroy everything. Victor Hale straightened his tie and forced a smile. A calm smile. The kind of smile he had perfected over years of lying. It's just a system error, he said, his voice smooth as silk. Old data. Meaningless. Nothing important. But Lucy didn't look away. She stared straight into his eyes. Her father had taught her to recognize lies, and this man was drowning in them. Lies have a smell, Lucy said quietly. And yours stinks. The room went silent. Everyone stared at her. This simple waitress, standing in the middle of a billionaire's office, calling out the vice president like she had every right in the world. Because she did. Andrew stepped closer to the screen. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, scrolling through the hidden files. His face went pale, then red, then cold as ice. These are transactions, Andrew said slowly. Millions of dollars, transferred out of the company, hidden under false accounts. He turned to Victor, his voice like steel. In your name. Victor laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was sharp, bitter, desperate. So what? Victor snapped. You think you built this empire alone, Andrew? You think your precious company survived because of your genius? He stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. I saved this company. I made the hard decisions you were too weak to make. Without me, Blake Industries would have collapsed years ago. Andrew's hands clenched into fists. You stole from me, from US, from everyone who trusted you. I took what I deserved, Victor shouted. His mask was gone now. The fake smiles, the false loyalty, all of it gone. You inherited everything, Andrew. Daddy's company, Mommy's love. You never had to fight for anything. I clawed my way up from nothing. I earned my place. By stealing, Lucy said, her voice cutting through his rage like a knife. By destroying innocent people? Victor turned to her, his eyes full of hate. Stay out of this, waitress. This doesn't concern you. But before anyone could react, the door opened. Clara Blake stepped into the room. She moved slowly, with grace and dignity. Her silver hair shone under the office lights. Her eyes were calm, but there was steel in them. Strength. She had heard everything. Victor, Clara said softly. Victor froze. Clara walked closer. She looked at him with sadness, not anger, just deep, deep sadness. Greed always disguises itself as competence, she said. You made us believe you were indispensable, but all along you were just a thief in expensive clothes. Victor's face went red. You don't understand. None of you understand. He lunged toward the door. He had to get out. He had to run. Now. But two security guards stepped into the doorway, blocking his path. They were big, strong, unmovable. Victor spun around, looking for another way out. But there was none. He was trapped. Lucy still held the old phone in her hand. Quietly, calmly, she opened the camera app, and she started recording. Every word, every movement, every desperate lie that came out of Victor's mouth. This is evidence, she said softly, for the truth. Andrew looked at her with gratitude, with respect. She had saved more than his company. She had saved his soul. On the screen behind them, the final file opened. It was old, very old. Years and years of hidden transactions. Stolen money, covered tracks. One of the engineers gasped. This has been going on for years. Since Since the beginning, Andrew felt dizzy. How had he not seen it? How had he been so blind? Then another file appeared. An email, old and buried deep in the system. The subject line read, "Urgent, Financial Discrepancy Report." The sender, Richard Carter. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. She stepped closer to the screen, her hands shaking. That's my dad's name," she whispered. Andrew opened the email. The words filled the screen. "To whom it may concern, I have discovered irregularities in the financial records of Blake Industries. Funds are being transferred to unauthorized accounts. I have traced the activity to Vice President Victor Hale. I am submitting this report as required by company policy. Please investigate immediately. Sincerely, Richard Carter, Senior Technician." The room spun. Lucy's vision blurred. Her father, her sweet, honest, hard-working father, had discovered the truth. He had tried to expose Victor, and Victor had destroyed him for it. Andrew turned to Victor, his voice barely a whisper. He knew. "Richard Carter knew what you were doing." Victor's face was white. "He was a fool, a meddling fool who didn't know his place." "He was a hero!" Lucy shouted, tears streaming down her face. "He was honest. He was good. And you destroyed him." Andrew felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. His entire world had been built on a lie, on the ruin of an innocent man, on the suffering of the woman standing in front of him, the woman who had just saved everything. Clara walked to Lucy and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your father was a brave man," Clara said, her voice breaking. "And I am so sorry for what happened to him." Lucy couldn't speak. She just held the phone tighter. The last piece of her father, the last connection to the truth. Victor slumped against the wall. He knew it was over. Everything was over. The security guards moved forward. They grabbed Victor's arms and pulled them behind his back. No, wait, you need me," Victor screamed. "You can't do this without me." But nobody listened. Nobody cared. As they dragged him toward the door, Victor looked back at Andrew one last time. His eyes were full of rage and fear. "You'll regret this," Victor hissed. "You'll all regret this." The door slammed shut behind him, and the room exhaled. A long, heavy breath, like waking from a nightmare. Lucy stood in the center of it all, tears rolling down her cheeks. She looked at the phone in her hand, the phone her father had carried every day, the phone that had just revealed the truth. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "Thank you for never giving up." Andrew watched her. His heart broke. For her father, for everything his pride had cost. And he knew nothing would ever be the same again. Lucy's hands trembled as she reached for the keyboard. She opened the next file. Another email. Older, dusty with time and buried secrets. She read it aloud, her voice shaking with every word. "Your father, Richard Carter, was a senior technician at Blake Industries." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, choking. Andrew went pale. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at Lucy like he was seeing a ghost. He worked for me," Andrew whispered. "For your company," Lucy corrected, her voice breaking. "He worked here for 15 years. He loved this place. He believed in it." Andrew felt his stomach drop. "What happened to him?" Lucy swallowed hard. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept reading. "He was accused of theft, financial fraud, stealing company funds." She looked up at Andrew, her eyes red and swollen. "But he didn't do it. He was innocent." Clara gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh no, I remember this case." Everyone turned to look at her. Clara's face was pale. Her eyes were filled with horror and regret. "It was years ago. A technician was fired for embezzlement. I remember Andrew's father handling it personally. He was so angry, so sure." She looked at her son, tears filling her eyes. "We never questioned it. We just believed what we were told." "What you were told by Victor," Lucy said, her voice rising. "He forged the evidence. He made it look like my father was stealing. But it was him. It was Victor all along." Andrew felt like the room was spinning. He gripped the edge of the desk to steady himself. "Victor framed your father?" Andrew asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes." Lucy's voice cracked. "He needed a scapegoat, someone to take the fall for what he was doing. So he chose my dad, a good man, an honest man, and he destroyed him." The room was silent, completely silent. You could hear every breath, every heartbeat. Lucy wiped her eyes and continued. "My father was fired. No severance, no references. His reputation was ruined. Nobody would hire him after that. He couldn't find work. We lost our house. We lost everything. Her voice broke completely now. Sobs shook her body. He died 3 years later. Broken, humiliated, drowning in debt. He never recovered. He just gave up. She held up the old phone, tears dripping onto the screen. This phone was all I had left of him, the only thing he didn't have to sell. Clara began to cry, soft, silent tears of shame and sorrow. Andrew felt his knees go weak. He had to sit down. His whole life, his whole empire, had been built on a lie, on the destruction of an innocent man, on the suffering of the woman standing in front of him, the woman who had just saved him. "I'm so sorry," Andrew whispered. "Lucy, I'm so sorry." But Lucy wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the phone, at the last piece of her father's legacy. "This phone," she said quietly, "was the last connection to the truth. He kept everything on it, every file, every email, every piece of evidence. He knew someday someone would find it. Someday the truth would come out." She looked up at Andrew, her eyes fierce through the tears. And today, it did. Andrew stood and walked toward her slowly. His eyes were red, wet. He had never cried in front of his employees before, but he couldn't stop the tears now. "Your father was a hero," Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I inherited the pride of the man who destroyed him." Lucy stared at him. Her heart was breaking, but there was something else there too. Something soft, something like hope. "But you can also inherit the redemption," she said quietly. Andrew looked into her eyes, really looked. And for the first time in his life, he saw what truly mattered. Not money, not power, not success. Truth, honesty, goodness. He fell to his knees in front of her. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Please, forgive me." The entire room held its breath. Engineers, assistants, security guards. Everyone watched in silence. Lucy looked down at him. This powerful man, this billionaire who had mocked her, who had laughed at her father's phone. And she saw a broken man, a man who finally understood. She reached out and gently touched his shoulder. "I forgive you," she said softly. "Not for you, but for my father, because he would want me to." The room remained silent, but something had changed. Something beautiful, something sacred. The miracle wasn't technical anymore. It was moral. Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Lucy. She held her tight, like a mother holding a lost daughter. "Your father is smiling down on you right now," Clara whispered through her tears. "I know he is." Lucy closed her eyes and let herself be held. For the first time in years, she felt her father's presence, not as a memory, but as something real, something eternal. Andrew stood slowly. He looked around the room at all the faces staring at him, and he knew what he had to do. The press conference room was packed. Reporters, cameras, flashing lights everywhere. The entire city wanted to know what had happened at Blake Industries, why the system had crashed, why the vice president had been arrested. Andrew Blake stood at the podium. His mother, Clara, stood beside him, and next to her, quiet and humble, was Lucy Carter. Andrew cleared his throat. The room went silent. "Thank you all for coming," he began. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "I called this press conference to tell you the truth, the whole truth, no matter how painful it is." The cameras zoomed in. Reporters leaned forward, pens ready. "Yesterday, our communication systems failed. Completely. It was a disaster. We lost billions. Our clients lost trust. And I lost my pride." He paused, took a deep breath. But in that moment of failure, something miraculous happened. A young woman came to our aid, a waitress from a small town in Ohio. She used an old phone, her father's phone, to restore our network and save our company. The reporters murmured. Cameras flashed. Lucy looked down, uncomfortable with the attention. Andrew continued. "But that's not the real story. The real story is this. Years ago, this woman's father worked for Blake Industries. His name was Richard Carter. He was a technician, a good man, an honest man." Andrew's voice broke slightly. "And my company destroyed him." The room erupted in whispers. Cameras clicked furiously. "Richard Carter discovered financial fraud within our company. He reported it. He did the right thing. But instead of investigating, we accused him. We fired him. We ruined his life, and he died, broken and humiliated, because of our arrogance." Tears filled Andrew's eyes. He didn't wipe them away. The real thief was our vice president, Victor Hale. He framed Richard Carter to cover his own crimes. And I was too proud, too blind, to see the truth. He turned to Lucy. This woman saved more than our company. She saved my soul. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure her father's name is cleared, that his sacrifice is honored. The room was silent now, completely silent. The error wasn't the technicians, Andrew said, his voice strong now. It was the arrogance of my company, the arrogance of men like me who think power makes us right. He stepped back from the podium. That's all. Thank you. The room exploded with questions, but Andrew didn't answer any of them. He walked off the stage. Outside the building, police cars waited. Victor Hale was led out in handcuffs, his head down, cameras flashing in his face. He had nowhere to hide now. No more lies, no more masks. Justice had finally come. Inside, Lucy tried to slip away quietly. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to go home. Back to the diner, back to her simple life. But Andrew caught her arm gently. Wait, he said. Please. Lucy turned, looked at him. You gave me back more than the network, Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me back my soul. Lucy smiled softly. My father used to say that the strongest wire is the one made of truth. Andrew laughed through his tears. He was a wise man. Clara approached them. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around Lucy and held her tight, like a mother, like family. You brought my son back to God, Clara whispered. Thank you. Thank you so much. Lucy's eyes filled with tears again, but they were different now. Not tears of pain, tears of peace. Outside, the autumn wind blew gently through the streets of New York. The storm had passed. The sky was clearing. Lucy reached into her pocket and touched the old phone. It was quiet now, at rest. We did it, Dad, she whispered. We did it. Andrew stepped closer. I want you to stay, to work with us, to help rebuild what we broke. Please. Lucy looked at him, then at the tall glass building, then back at him. I'm not a woman of tall buildings, Mr. Blake, she said gently. I serve better where the ground is firm. Andrew nodded slowly. He understood. Then I'll come to you. Lucy smiled. Earl's Diner is always open. Clara took Lucy's hand. We'll visit often, I promise. And for the first time in years, Lucy felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope, family, home. As they walked out into the autumn air, the city seemed brighter, warmer. The truth had set them all free. 3 days later, the black car pulled up in front of Earl's Diner again. But this time it was different. Andrew Blake stepped out wearing a simple suit, no tie, no expensive watch. Just a man, a humble man. He walked into the diner slowly. The bell above the door chimed. Lucy was wiping down the counter. She looked up and smiled. Well, well, she said. Look who's back. Andrew smiled, a real smile. Can I sit at the counter? Or is it still only for humble people? Lucy laughed. She grabbed a coffee pot. For people with humility, there's always space. Andrew sat down. He looked around the diner, the worn booths, the old jukebox in the corner, the faded photos on the walls, and he felt something strange, something warm. He felt at home. Earl came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. When he saw Andrew, he grinned wide. Well, I'll be damned, Earl said. The Billionaire's a regular now. Who would have thought? Andrew laughed. Life is full of surprises, Earl. You want the usual? Lucy asked, pouring his coffee. I don't have a usual yet, Andrew said. Then you'll get what everyone gets. Coffee, eggs, and a side of wisdom from Earl. Earl chuckled. The wisdom's free. The eggs cost extra. As they laughed, the bell chimed again. Clara Blake walked in, her face bright with joy. She wore a simple dress and a shawl. No jewelry, no pretense. Just a woman looking for pie and love. Lucy, dear, Clara said warmly. I heard the apple pie here is legendary. Lucy beamed. Best in Ohio, ma'am. None of that ma'am business. Call me Clara. Clara sat next to her son. The three of them, billionaire, mother, and waitress, looked like the most unlikely family in the world. But somehow, they fit. Earl brought out pie, coffee. Laughter filled the small diner. Lucy looked at them and felt her heart swell. My father would have loved this, she whispered. Clara reached over and squeezed her hand. Maybe he's watching. Maybe he sees it all. Lucy's eyes filled with happy tears. I think he is. Andrew looked at Lucy, really looked at her, not as a waitress, not as someone who saved his company, but as someone who saved him. He reached across the counter and gently took her hand. No words, no grand gestures, just a touch, simple, honest, real. Lucy looked into his eyes, and she saw something beautiful there. Change, growth, redemption. The silence between them was full of meaning, full of promise. Earl broke the moment with a laugh. If you two keep looking at each other like that, I'm gonna have to charge extra for romance. They all laughed. Deep, real laughter that filled the diner and spilled out into the autumn air. Outside, the leaves danced in the wind. The world kept turning. But inside Earl's diner, something sacred was happening. Forgiveness was being served, with coffee, with pie, with love, and for the first time in a long time, everyone felt whole. 1 week later, the black car appeared in front of Earl's diner again. Lucy was carrying a tray of dishes to the kitchen when she saw it through the window. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected to see him again so soon. Andrew stepped out of the car. He looked different today, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He walked into the diner with a small smile on his face. "Back already?" Lucy said, trying to sound casual, but her heart was racing. Andrew sat down at the counter. "I have a proposal for you." Lucy raised an eyebrow. She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. "A proposal? Let me guess. You want to buy the diner and turn it into a fancy coffee shop?" Andrew laughed. A real laugh, light and genuine. "No, nothing like that." "Then what?" He looked at her seriously. "It's not a business proposal." Lucy's eyes widened. "Oh no, then it's worse." Andrew laughed again, this time harder. He couldn't help it. She was so quick, so sharp, so wonderfully real. "I promise it's not bad," he said, still smiling. "I want you to lead a new department at Blake Industries." Lucy blinked. "What?" "A community support division. We're creating it from scratch to help small towns, rural areas, places that have been ignored by big companies like mine." He paused. "And I want you to run it." Lucy stared at him. "Me? Andrew, I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about running a company department." "That's exactly why I need you." She frowned. "That makes no sense." Andrew leaned forward. His eyes were sincere, passionate. "Lucy, you understand what connects people. Really connects them. Not technology, not money. You understand the heart of it. The human part." Lucy shook her head. "There are people with degrees, experience, people who actually know what they're doing. I don't want people with degrees," Andrew said firmly. "I want someone who cares, someone who sees people, not numbers. Someone like you." Lucy felt her throat tighten. She looked down at her hands. Rough hands, working hands. Could someone like her really do something like that? From the kitchen, Earl's voice called out, "Do it, Lucy." Lucy turned. Earl was standing in the doorway, his eyes glistening with emotion. "The world needs people like you, girl," Earl said, his voice thick. "People with good hearts. Don't hide that light under a bushel. Let it shine." Lucy felt tears prick her eyes. She looked at the old phone sitting on the counter. Her father's phone. It had been silent for days now, ever since the truth came out, like it had finally completed its mission. She picked it up and held it gently. "What would you do, Dad?" she whispered. The phone stayed silent, but in her heart, she felt the answer. "Help them, sweetheart. Always help." Lucy took a deep breath. She looked at Andrew. "Okay, I'll do it." Andrew's face lit up. "Really?" "But I have one condition," Lucy said, holding up the phone. Andrew smiled. "Let me guess. You're bringing your piece of junk with you?" Lucy grinned. "That's right, me and my Trambolo. We're a package deal." Andrew laughed. "I wouldn't have it any other way. Besides, I'm starting to think that phone is the reason for all my good luck now." Earl came over and wrapped Lucy in a big bear hug. "I'm so proud of you, kiddo. Your dad would be too." Lucy hugged him back, tears streaming down her face. "I'll come visit every week, I promise." "You better," Earl said gruffly. "Who else is going to make coffee the way I like it?" Andrew stood and extended his hand to Lucy. "Ready?" Lucy wiped her eyes. She looked around the diner one more time. The place that had been her home, her family, her safety. But it was time to step into something bigger, something her father would have wanted for her. She took Andrew's hand. "Ready." Outside, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and gold. Beautiful, peaceful. As they walked to the car, Lucy looked up at the sky and smiled. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, "for everything." The wind blew softly, carrying her words up into the heavens. And somewhere, somehow, Richard Carter smiled down on his daughter. She was going to change the world. He had always known she would. Together, Lucy and Andrew drove off toward the horizon, toward the future, toward a new beginning. And behind them, Earl stood at the diner door, waving goodbye with tears of joy streaming down his weathered face. 6 months had passed since that autumn day when everything changed. Blake Industries looked different now. It felt different. The hallways were brighter. The atmosphere was warmer. Employees smiled more, laughed more. People weren't just numbers anymore. They were human beings with families and dreams and struggles. And it was all because of the changes Andrew had made. Changes inspired by a waitress with an old phone and a heart full of grace. Clara Blake stood in the main lobby of the company headquarters. In front of her was a beautiful memorial wall. Photos, plaques, stories of employees who had served the company with honor. And right in the center was a large portrait of Richard Carter. Underneath it, a golden plaque read, "Richard Carter, a man of truth and courage. In his honor, we pledge to always choose integrity over profit and people over power." Clara touched the plaque gently, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry we didn't see you, Richard," she whispered, "but we see you now, and we will never forget." Every month, Clara led a program in Richard's name, the Carter Foundation. It provided scholarships for children of working-class families, help for single parents, support for small businesses in struggling towns. It was Clara's way of making things right, of honoring the man her family had wronged. Across the building, in a bright, open office filled with maps and phones and smiling faces, Lucy Carter was hard at work. She wore simple clothes, a comfortable sweater and jeans. No suits, no heels, just Lucy being Lucy. Her desk was covered with photos of small towns, rural communities, places that had been forgotten by the modern world, and Lucy was connecting them, one town at a time, one family at a time. She coordinated projects that brought phone lines to remote areas, internet access to isolated schools, communication tools to elderly people living alone. "Ms. Carter, the installation in Kentucky is complete," one of her team members called out excitedly. Lucy grinned. "That's wonderful. Send them a welcome package, and make sure to include a handwritten note. People love those." Her team laughed and got to work. They adored Lucy. She was kind, patient. She treated everyone with respect, no matter their position. She was a leader, but more than that, she was a friend. Every Friday afternoon, Andrew left the office early. He drove to Earl's diner. It had become a ritual, a sacred one. He'd sit at the counter, order coffee and pie, chat with Earl, laugh with the regulars. People didn't whisper about him anymore, didn't gawk. He was just Andrew now, a regular, a friend. Earl had put up a photo on the wall behind the counter. It was a picture of the three of them, Andrew, Lucy, and Clara, all smiling in front of the diner. Underneath it, Earl had scribbled in his messy handwriting, "Family isn't about blood, it's about love." Customers would point at the photo and smile. Some would ask about the story, and Earl would tell it with pride. "That's the billionaire who learned to listen," he'd say, grinning. "Best customer I ever had." The story had spread through the town, then the state, then the country. News outlets called it the miracle of the old phone. Magazines wrote articles titled, "The Waitress Who Saved a Billionaire's Soul." But Lucy and Andrew didn't care about the fame. They cared about the work, the purpose, the people. Inside Blake Industries, there was a small museum now, a place where the company's history was displayed. And right in the center, protected by glass, was the old phone, Richard Carter's phone, the phone that had saved a company, exposed a criminal, revealed the truth, and connected two souls. Underneath it, a golden plaque read, "The wire that reconnected hearts." People visited the museum every day. They'd stop and stare at the phone. Some would cry, some would smile, some would pray. One afternoon, Lucy visited the museum alone. She stood in front of the glass case, looking at her father's phone. Her heart ached, but it was a good ache, a healing one. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single white flower. She placed it gently at the base of the case. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The world heard the truth. Finally, they know who you really were. A hero, an honest, beautiful soul." Tears streamed down her face. but she was smiling. "I hope I'm making you proud," she said softly. Suddenly the phone inside the case emitted a soft beep. Lucy gasped. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. The phone beeped once more, then went silent. Lucy covered her mouth with her hand, tears pouring down her cheeks. "I love you too, Dad," she whispered. Outside, the wind blew gently through the trees. The sun shone bright. The world kept turning, but in that quiet moment, Lucy felt her father's presence, his love, his pride, and she knew everything was exactly as it should be. She wiped her eyes, smiled through her tears, and walked out of the museum with peace in her heart. Richard Carter's legacy was alive, and it would live on forever. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon at Earl's Diner. The lunch rush was over. Only a few regulars sat scattered at the tables, sipping coffee and chatting softly. Lucy was wiping down the counter when the door opened. She looked up and froze. Andrew Blake stood in the doorway, but he looked different, very different. No bodyguards, no expensive suit, no briefcase, just Andrew, in a simple shirt and jeans, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Lucy's heart started pounding, hard. "Hi," Andrew said, his voice soft. "Hi," Lucy replied, her voice barely a whisper. Andrew walked slowly to the counter. He set the flowers down gently in front of her. "I didn't bring contracts today," he said, smiling nervously. "Just courage." Lucy felt her cheeks flush. She pretended to focus on the flowers, but her hands were shaking. "Well, that's a nice change," she said, trying to sound casual. "Courage is cheaper than lawyers." Andrew laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Lucy, I need to tell you something." "Then say it quick," Lucy said, glancing toward the kitchen. "Before Earl comes out and chases you with a spatula." Andrew took a deep breath. Then, slowly, carefully, he got down on one knee. Right there, in the middle of Earl's Diner, on the old, cracked tile floor, in front of the worn Formica counter. Lucy's breath caught. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Andrew!" "What are you?" "Lucy Carter," Andrew said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You saved my company. You saved my soul. You showed me what really matters in this world." He looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "I don't want to spend another day without you. Will you share the rest of your life with me?" The entire diner went silent. Jake, the truck driver, stopped mid-sip of his coffee. The cook peeked out from the kitchen. Even the jukebox seemed to pause. Lucy stared down at Andrew. Tears streamed down her face. "You know we don't take credit cards here, right?" she said, her voice shaking with laughter and tears. Andrew grinned through his own tears. "What about love? Do you accept love? Paid in infinite installments?" Lucy laughed. A beautiful, joyful laugh that filled the whole diner. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Andrew. Yes." The diner exploded with applause. Jake jumped to his feet, clapping wildly. The cook banged pots and pans together. Customers cheered and whistled. Earl rushed out from the back, his face red with emotion. When he saw Andrew on one knee and Lucy crying happy tears, he stopped. His eyes filled with tears too. "Well, I'll be damned," Earl said, his voice choked. "Love does win." Andrew stood and pulled Lucy into his arms. He kissed her, softly at first, then deeper, a kiss full of promise and hope and forever. The diner erupted again, louder this time. In the corner, Clara Blake sat at a small table. She had been there the whole time, watching quietly. Tears poured down her face. "Thank you, God," she whispered, looking up at the ceiling. "Thank you for bringing them together." Lucy pulled back from the kiss and looked into Andrew's eyes. "I love you," she said simply. "I don't know when it happened, but I do. I love you." Andrew smiled, the biggest, brightest smile of his entire life. "I love you too, so much." They held each other tight, surrounded by cheers and applause and so much love it felt like the little diner might burst. Earl walked over and clapped Andrew on the back. "You better take care of her, rich boy, or you'll answer to me." Andrew laughed. "I promise, Earl. I'll spend every day of my life making her happy." Earl nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now get out of my diner. Lovebirds are bad for business. Makes everyone too happy to eat." Everyone laughed. Lucy hugged Earl tight. "I love you, old man." Earl hugged her back, his voice gruff. "Love you too, kiddo. Now go. Be happy." As Lucy and Andrew walked out hand in hand, the entire diner watched through the windows. The sun was setting. The sky was painted in gold and pink. Perfect. Beautiful. Clara stood and walked to the window. She pressed her hand against the glass. "Your father is smiling, Lucy," she whispered. "I know he is." And somewhere in heaven, Richard Carter watched his daughter walk into her future, and he wept tears of pure joy. The miracle was complete. Not a technical one, not a financial one, a human one. A miracle of the heart. Love had won, goodness had triumphed, and two broken souls had become whole. 1 year later, the sign above the diner was new, freshly painted, bright and beautiful. It read, "Carter and Blake's Diner." Inside, Lucy and Andrew stood side by side behind the counter. Both wore matching aprons. Both had flour on their hands. Both were laughing. "You're doing it wrong," Lucy teased, watching Andrew try to flip a pancake. "I'm a billionaire, not a chef," Andrew protested, laughing as the pancake landed half on the plate, half on the counter. "Former billionaire," Lucy corrected with a grin. "Now you're just my husband who can't cook." Andrew pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Best demotion of my life." Jake, the truck driver, banged his mug on the counter. Less kissing, more coffee. They all laughed. Customers filled every booth. The diner was busier than ever, but it wasn't just about the food anymore. It was about the love, the warmth, the family feeling that filled every corner. Clara sat at her usual table by the window. She wore a simple dress and had a book of Bible stories open in front of her. A little girl sat beside her, listening with wide eyes as Clara read aloud. And then the angel said, "Do not be afraid." Clara's voice was soft and sweet, full of grace. The little girl smiled. "I love that story, Mrs. Blake." Clara hugged her gently. "I love it too, sweetheart." Earl had retired 6 months ago. He'd handed the diner over to Lucy and Andrew with tears in his eyes. "The lesson has been learned," he'd said that day. "Love is all that matters. You two proved it." Now Earl spent his days fishing by the river, visiting grandkids, resting, but he came by the diner every Sunday for pie, and every time Lucy made sure it was perfect. The town had changed too. People didn't talk about the arrogant billionaire anymore. That man didn't exist. He was gone, erased by love and humility. Now there was just Andrew, a good man, a humble man, a man who poured coffee and flipped pancakes and listened to people's stories with genuine care. And Lucy, sweet, strong Lucy, the woman who had saved a man's soul with an old phone and a kind heart. Every evening, after the diner closed, Lucy and Andrew would sit on the porch out back. They'd watch the sunset over the small town they now called home. Andrew held Lucy's hand. "Do you ever miss the old life? The simple days before all this?" Lucy smiled. "This is the simple life, Andrew. This is everything I ever wanted." Andrew squeezed her hand. "I used to think success was about money, power, buildings and deals and control. And now I know the truth," Andrew said softly. "It's not the phone that makes the connection." Lucy looked at him, her eyes shining. "Then what is it?" Andrew smiled. "It's the heart." Lucy leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in colors too beautiful for words. Inside the diner, on a shelf behind the counter, sat the old phone, Richard Carter's phone. It didn't work anymore. The battery had finally died, but it didn't matter. It had done its job. It had revealed the truth. It had connected two souls. It had changed everything. Now it rested there like a sacred relic, a reminder of love, of justice, of faith. Lucy looked through the window at the phone. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We really did it." Andrew kissed the top of her head. "He's proud of you. I know he is." Lucy closed her eyes, and in that moment, she felt it, her father's love, surrounding her, protecting her, blessing her. The wind blew softly through the trees. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky. And the story that began with a mocking laugh and an old phone ended exactly where it should have, with love, with family, with connection, not the kind that comes from wires and signals, but the kind that comes from the soul, the true connection, the eternal one. And as Lucy and Andrew sat together under the stars, holding hands and dreaming of tomorrow, one truth remained clear. The strongest wire in the world isn't made of copper or fiber. It's made of love, and it will never break. The end.